ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. Welcome back into the program here on the Sports Gap. I'm Scott Prather, and my guest at this time needs no introduction, but you know what? I'll give him one anyway. The editor and publisher of Mike Detillier's NFL Draft Report. He's the college and pro football analyst for WWL 870 AM in New Orleans, a sports columnist for several newspapers, a weekly guest on the Mr. Bitter Show every Saturday morning right here on ESPN 1420. Mike Detillier is our guest. Welcome to the show, Mike. How are you?
My pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
Real quick, Mike, I know you're I know we have you on to talk football, but do you follow the NBA much? What did you think of the Pelicans win last night?
Well, you know what? A lot of energy in that game last night. It was a must-win kind of for both. You could see the Spurs did everything they could to win that game. They wanted the two seed. Again, it's a showcase game for Anthony Davis. The franchise has been through a lot of ups and downs this year, inconsistent play, injuries, but it was the energy of that room in the arena last night that was really showcased. But again, more than anything, I think the playoffs are always the measuring stick, fair or unfair, about the great players. And now you get to see one in Anthony Davis in that atmosphere. And I think everyone wanted to see how the Pelicans would respond to pressure. And you saw they came out blazing, and then all of a sudden the Spurs made that run in the fourth quarter. And they overcame that tsunami and were able to get out of it. So, it's a great win for the franchise. Certainly the biggest win for the Pelicans franchise. And, it's certainly a nice building block for what they have done. Let's see if they can go forward with this now and how far it'll take them. Because, we're just getting there, and everybody's euphoric today because you got into the playoffs. But if you get knocked out, that energy, you lose it in a week. It's gone. You want to continue. Because once you get a taste of it, Scott, there's nothing that can quench your thirst like that again. It's like winning a Super Bowl. You can talk about going back to the playoffs, but nothing is on that same level as winning it all. So the first baby step for this franchise was to get into the playoffs, not to win a series. But look who they're playing. The best team in the West.
Yeah, a team that won 67 games, one of the best regular season teams in NBA history. But, you're right, Mike. It's about taking steps. But heading into this offseason, at least having taken that step into the postseason, even if they, I think they maybe get a game against Golden State with Drew Holiday, depending on his limit restriction. Maybe two. I think we'd all be pretty shocked if they were to upset him. But I think heading into the offseason, just having that taste, as you said it, it's a different outlook. Now when you go into next offseason, getting ready for the 2015-2016 year, it's not, okay, we got to get to the playoffs. It's, hey, we've been to the playoffs. Now it's time to win a series and do some more damage and get Anthony Davis a better seed and things like that. It kind of, they can say that the goals increase each year, but I do feel like getting there kind of realigns their goals a little bit and speeds up the process. And maybe I'm putting too much into just getting into the postseason, but that's kind of what it felt like last night. You said everybody's euphoric today, and it's hard not to be because what a thrilling game last night that was.
The other thing, too, about it is that every year is different. It's the same way in pro football, college football, baseball, whatever. Every year is different. So you got to look at it differently every year. Your goal is you want to get into the playoffs and you want to get into the series and win. But I think it's always adding to the cart. Because if you stand pat, that's the worst thing in sports, staying with the same things you've had. Because everybody else is trying to get better. And so you've got to continue to get better. But what you, again, get to see is the showcase performance of one of the two best NBA players in the world, in Anthony Davis.
That's
he
what
carried this franchise on its back. And if I'm Tom Benson, man, my thing is whatever you guys got to do financially, you make it work. Because all I know is that eventually that the agent for Anthony Davis will add this money up and say, you know what, top money in New Orleans and Los Angeles and New York is all the same, but what Anthony Davis can make financially away from the game is totally different in L.A., in Chicago, in New York than in New Orleans. Just look what Chris Paul has dipped into since he's been out in New Orleans. Look the commercials and the different things that he has made financially, and his agent smartly putting him in that spot to make that, that moolah somewhere else. The Pelicans are going to have to do something quickly, I think, to soothe Anthony. And I know he likes it here, but, everybody is going to say that. But you know what?
Except Randy Gregory, Mike, but more on that in a minute, right?
Well, with Randy...
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I just had to add a quick joke in there.
That's a kid being a kid. But and he's not controlled yet by an agent telling him what to say and how to say it, to the most part. Anthony Davis is being controlled by some mega agents who have smartly, like LeBron and other guys, put him in a position where he's the next superstar in the NBA. And watch what you say, how you say it, and there is a lot of money to be made. So the big question mark for me with this franchise, and I felt this all along, of how the Benson relationship, ownership-wise, how I don't think that's going to have any short-term effects Saints-wise, because the Saints hierarchy is going to stay the same. It would have been totally different had Rita took over. I think she was ready to clean house front office-wise, not coaching-wise, but front office-wise. That I think if it affects anything quickly, I think you may see it in the negotiations with Anthony Davis. I think because that agent who's got Anthony Davis's interests and his financial interests in mind will say, what can you do financially to offset the money if we go to Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, which is his hometown?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Mike Detillier, our guest, ESPN1420n.com. Number one, if you can be good enough in a smaller market and you're a superstar, Kevin Durant's been top 3 in terms of money made off the court with, advertising and things like that, and being the face of different products. But more than that, when you look at what KD did, what LeBron did, what Chris Paul did, Mike, they all signed that first extension when they were eligible because they could be restricted, teams could match, and the city that they were in. Now, some of those guys signed a short extension, 3 years instead of the max. July 1st of this year, Anthony Davis is eligible for a max contract extension that no other team in any other market can actually offer quite as much under the current CBA. So I think, in my opinion, at least the next couple of years, I think in 2015 he signs it, even with the potential lockout next year, because the increase with the cap will increase the overall revenue. Thus, therefore, with the percentage will increase his salary. It's the contract after the next one. I'm kind of in the minority here because a lot of folks feel like, no, it's this first contract coming up. I'm like, no, I think that one's safe. It's the one after that, when he's 6-7 years in the league, that you want to be a player. You want to be competing for championships, because if you're not, that's whenever the guys at their peak he'd be 25, 26 years old. That's the one that I'm more worried about. But, of course, that's what, 5 years away, I guess?
Well, what's happening now in speaking, because that's part of my game every day to speak to agents, one of the things they tell me today is to frontal hit that, to make sure that that first contract, which no major superstar has ever turned down. So Davis more than likely won't turn down. But with new money flowing into the NBA now, TV-wise, is that the feeling is to make sure he's taken care of that first time, because you know what? No matter what you say, and I don't disagree with you, the second time around, if you don't do it right and get him at least some inkling of financial deals away from the court, he won't be here, no matter what. So in dealing with the agent part of it, I can tell you, Scott, that I don't disagree with what you're saying, but if you don't do it right the first time and include him in deals or try to get him involved in deals, that second contract today, the way the NBA, I think, has grown dramatically very quickly, I think that you got no shot to keep him when the second contract comes back around.
More marketing.
Absolutely zilch.
Yeah, and I think more marketing deals for superstars come the more you're on TV, the more you're a franchise player. The Pelicans only on national TV 3 times this year. They're going to surpass that in the next 10 days alone. Get into the postseason, marketing platform a little bit bigger. Get more national TV games next year because you're a superstar. That's how you have to do it. They're never going to treat you like the Lakers or the Knicks whenever it doesn't matter how bad you are. We're still going to give you so many national television games.
Scott, you got to do it ahead of that. You can't wait till national TV takes over. Chris Paul had 2 major contract deals in his hand. This is what his agent told me. Within 72 hours of being traded from the then Hornets to the Clippers. How many TV games did the Clippers have? He was only there 72 hours. It is the market itself. So I understand what you're saying about the baby steps, but in this league today, now everything has changed because of the new TV contract. And I do think one of the things Anthony Davis's agent will be saying is that from your standpoint, team-wise, you've got to show us that you're going to be able to help in that affair locally. How many local commercials have Anthony Davis done? Zilch. He did one for the Pelicans when he was the answer man. So you're going to have your marketing people help in that category. And so that's the disadvantage of a small market, big market, where Chris Paul is in L.A. 3 days and has 2 national commercials in his pocket. He played 1 game. It's a changing world from how we saw marketing done years ago and today, and how it's going to be done tomorrow, next year, and the following. So it's a little changing world there that we have to adapt to, that I think teams, small market-wise, if it's Memphis, if it's Minneapolis, whatever, Charlotte, they've got to be able to work hand in hand with not only the national people, but also locals to take care of their star players. If not, what you're going to see is in that second movement, not the first contract being over, but the second one, agents saying, you know what, I can count that money in L.A. and Los Angeles, no state tax in Texas. So a lot of those things come into play now, even in NFL free agency. If money's close, when they look at how the state tax is broken down, Texas, Florida, in comparison to other cities or other states, you can't compare it. And so that's why I think this next couple of weeks, months, is critical to make sure that Anthony is taken care of, not only from the national standpoint, which normally a big agent, he'll be able to handle that, but also to get some local stuff around him. And today, again, I just asked the question, have you seen Anthony Davis on any local commercials?
Outside of ones for the own team, no, but you got Josh Hill for the Saints in local commercials, but not Anthony Davis.
He on that one, too. So I said, he laughingly joked with me, you got more local commercials than I do.
Unbelievable.
You know what? It's sad, but it's true. So
So locally, take care of the guy, and that's Mike Detillier, our guest, ESPN1420 and .com. This offseason, follow this stuff that Anthony does off the court locally from a marketing standpoint. It's all part of the pie. It's not just the game that's the pie. That's a piece of the pie, but there are a lot of pieces. Mike Detillier. Well, Mike, I thought we'd talk about 2 minutes, but here we are 15 in, and we've talked Davis, but I love every second of it. But when we jump into football right now, Mike, let all of our listeners know that Mike Detillier's 2015 draft report is available now, or as I like to call it, the Draft Guide Bible. Folks can go to MikeDetillier.com. You can learn more about how to acquire a copy. Fill us in a little bit about what they're going to get whenever they get this just extremely informative draft report.
Well, we got over 350 players here in detailed profiled in the book. Over 700 rated, a 4-round mock draft, team-by-team needs section, our fantasy players for next year, top junior players for 2016. And one of the things that I get a lot of comments about, and we will expand with it next year, is I go to about 13. This year was actually one more. I actually went one more. Somebody else sent one in. We actually had 14 different opinions, top players in the NFL. Now, Scott, you would think that wouldn't be that difficult a deal to come up with.
Right.
The top 8 or 10 are in every one. Basically, almost everyone. From 11 to 104, I got some guys that have that 12 guy listed, and the next guy, he's got that guy listed at 93rd. So there are people that are either coaches, scouts, or director of player personnel in the league with that varying opinion. So it goes to show you not only is opinions varied on college players, but it's on the professionals. And you would think, Scott, that would be the easiest thing to come up with. It is to get them and look at how they break them down. That's amazing to me.
Unbelievable.
And so it is part of the book that we have. And, we try to detail as many players as we can in each section. And to give you a breakdown, and this is my opinion of them. And, I do give a mock draft how I think most of them will get selected, but my ratings are how I rate them, not how the Saints or Green Bay or the Raiders or the Panthers rate them. It would be how I rate them. And so it gives you one man's opinion on that player that comes out. So this is 27 years for me doing it. I can say less than 2 weeks now from the draft, and it was the biggest seller we've ever had. And so it's tremendously well. But, again, it's opinion on those different players, almost 200 pages that you get. And you can, if you want to log on, you can go on to saintsreport.com, MikeDetillier.com. We ship it out first class, so it gets to you in a day or two.
It's an amazing guide that I like to use every year whenever we get close to the draft. You just said it, 2 weeks from today, we got round 1. What percentage odds, Mike, would you put on Tampa Bay not selecting Jameis Winston with the number 1 overall pick?
Well, listen, I know it's off the field incidents, so I'm going to always put that into play. I think there's probably 90% that they pick him. So answering the question, it'd probably be 10% that they wouldn't. And the only thing with that would be if something came up dramatically off the field,
right?
With Jameis, they wanted to work out with him. He's their hometown guy, so to speak. And if Lovey wins, he's got to win with Winston. I think the world of Marcus Mariota. I've got a chance to spend time with him the last 2 summers at the Manning Passing Academy. Great kid. I think he is got a chance to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. But he's not NFL ready today. That's not his fault. He played in a system where it was spread, pistol, and it was all about throwing to an area, throwing to a space, to a player. But that's not the NFL, Scott. I mean, you and I talked about this so many times. And, we agree on that, man, the great quarterbacks are so good with the secondary and third reads. That's not what Marcus was asked to do. Jameis Winston's the most pro-ready quarterback I've graded since Andrew Luck. On the field, great competitor, tremendous leader, smart, accurate, can put the ball in a tight spot, has only lost one college game. I mean, that's amazing to me. Now, he's had his hand in the piranha water a lot to have games on the line, and he's been money, except for the Oregon game. But it's the off-the-field incidents that's troubling to me. Why would a kid who's got so much going for him put himself in that spot? Listen, all of us have done dumb things in our 20s. We do dumb things in our 50s. I can attest to that because, I'm 54 years old. But one of the things you worry about is a guy doing it over and over again. And so that is troubling to me. But I think the Bucs wanted to work out with Winston. And I think for Lovey, if he picks Mariota, in essence, I think he's picking him for the next coach. Because he won't be there when Marcus develops into that starter that you can see is an upper echelon player.
Where do you think – I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike. I was just going to ask real quick, well, who do you think takes Mariota?
I don't think he goes to Tennessee. I think that's where Leonard Williams goes. I think they're going to give Mettenberger a shot here. Again, I bring up Weisenhunt. If I pick Mariota, who am I picking him for? He ain't going to be around when I'm around.
Right.
Would it be a trade-up with San Diego? Real quick. I think that Ryan Pace will find all about Jay Cutler real quick and figure out that I've got to eat him for a year, but after that he's gone. And the Jets, I have no idea what the hell they do with that quarterback every year. So I look at those three teams, San Diego, Jets, Bears, of being the teams most likely to get Marcus. And it'll be interesting to see that, if it falls like I think it will, in Winston, Leonard Williams going to Tennessee, Jacksonville doesn't need a quarterback. They played Blake Bortles a year ago, and I think they're going to go with Dante Fowler from Florida. What happens at the 4 spot, I think, is maybe the first sort of maneuver that some team may look to say, I'm getting a little itchy there. Maybe we ought to trade with the Raiders to assure ourselves of Marcus. If I'm the Raiders and it's San Diego, I'd tell him to go take a hike. Man, I ain't putting him in my division, but you think about it, would the Jets or would the Bears be in that element to do it? The wild card is Cleveland, too. And I say that, are you convinced that Johnny Manziel is your guy after all his off-the-field incidents? Caretaker quarterback? Man, if I'm Mike Pettine, I'm fighting for my life here, and this is my life preserver at quarterback, I might think about that, maybe making a maneuver up to get Marcus. The first spot, to me, Scott, I think becomes the area where teams target maybe going after Marcus.
Mike Detillier, our guest here on the Sports Gap, ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. In his latest mock, who does he have the Saints selecting at 13 overall? And what is the biggest position of need in this draft for the Saints? All of that and more coming up next with our special guest, the man himself, Mike Detillier, on ESPN 1420 and ESPN1420.com. ESPN 1420, ESPN1420.com. We are back here on the Sports Gap. I'm Scott Prather. Mike Detillier, our guest right now. Again, you need to get Mike Detillier's 2015 draft report. You can head to saintsreport.com or MikeDetillier.com to learn more about how to acquire a copy. They'll get the overnight shipping in there. You'll have it. I like to call it the Draft Guide Bible. We talked a lot about Anthony Davis, talked about Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota. Let's jump into the Saints, Mike. In your latest mock, who do you have the Saints selecting at 13 overall?
I got him going with Randy Gregory. You know what? I think I would have thought a month ago there's no way Gregory lasts that long. Now, I had heard the rumors about Randy, but once he fessed up because he had to, then there was no question he was falling out of the top 10. But, pass rushers are a premium. And when I look at 12 and 13, Cleveland, New Orleans, both those teams looking for pass rushers. And so I think that's a strong possibility Gregory would be there. One thing I do know, Scott, I'm convinced of, Dante Fowler, Vic Beasley from Clemson, Bud Dupree from Kentucky, and I think Shane Ray from Missouri, all off the board by the time the Saints pick. That leaves you one guy as a pass rusher, and that's Gregory.
Now,
so it's interesting. The Saints have never gone that route with a player who has had off-the-field problems in the first couple picks.
Okay, real quick, Mike, I'll jump in because I wanted to have you on for many reasons. One of them was this. That's kind of my take on it. A lot of folks have asked me about Gregory, and I've said I don't think they're going to select Randy Gregory because of their history and the reason you just gave. So what about this situation makes you think that they're going to break the mold? And granted, they've broken the mold a lot so far this offseason. But in this case with Gregory, why do you think they kind of get away from what they've done in the past and say, you know what, we're still going to take him?
I think one of the things is he's got a pretty good support system around him. With his mom and dad, I think he was hanging around guys that didn't have his best interests at heart. In talking to coaches with Nebraska, they tell me, he was a good kid. They knew he had some issues off the field, but they felt as though atmosphere led him into getting into trouble. So I debated this a long time because of the fact they had never done it. But then kind of looking into Gregory's past and, some of the things that are around him, I think sometimes you got to stumble a little bit. It's an old Rick Venturi line. He used to always tell me, Mike, most players got to fall somewhere before they can run. And sometimes it's off-the-field issues. Sometimes it's personal issues with women. Sometimes it's alcohol, drugs, you name it. Sometimes it's just the adjustment to the NFL and fame and fortune they're not used of. And some of them take a tumble. Most take a tumble. To happen to Randy Gregory now may get him focused to the point where, you know what, I'm not going to get a lot of chances. And they already got the reputation now. And I just got a feeling if he's there, Scott, they go with him. And I know it's not been their path, but he's ready to help you today as a pass rusher. He's ready to help you now. When you look at him and his ability to get off the line of scrimmage and quickly get into the backfield and use those long arms and that huge wingspan to do certain things, and you can maneuver him around because he's played defensive end. He's the type player built for what Rob Ryan has done in different places because he likes to be hybrid with his defensive end, outside linebackers. It's going to be a defensive-oriented draft. That was something I took a shot at when we went to print. Last night, Sean Payton said exactly that. We need to get better on defense, and we need players that can help us now. In essence, that was a shot at the Stanley Jean-Baptiste pick. I don't know how many people caught it or didn't, but his deal of I want guys that can help me today is his fire at scouting department or whoever pulled that trigger on Stanley Jean-Baptiste. It's a little bit of a dig on his part publicly at that selection. And I know one thing, had Jeremy Hill been there, despite all the off-the-field issues, and it was something that Bobby J and I were talking about days before the draft, someone close to Jeremy Hill told me the Saints are going to pick Jeremy Hill in round 2 if he's there. I said, they've never used the first or second round pick on a troubled player. Says, I'm just telling you, the boss likes me. And I knew what he meant when he meant the boss. That's only one, and that's Peyton. And sure enough, the Hill goes off the board with Cincinnati. A few more picks later, the Saints pick Baptiste. We go directly to the press conference, and with no prodding, Peyton says, we had a few guys up on the board, and one of the guys we really liked was Jeremy Hill. And we just stared at one another. We had it. And I had it. He just wasn't there. And I look back at that moment that they were going to take a chance on Hill. So my thinking is, if they were going to take a chance on Hill, then they might do the same thing with Randy Gregory.
They're going to have to knock it out the park without question, Mike, if they do take the chance. The upside is there. I'm not sure if they'll break the mold, but you're more tied in than most of us. And when I saw it on your mock draft, I said, I got to ask Mike about that. That obviously these things are, I don't want to call it a complete crapshoot because you put a lot of work in, but
it's not more than an educated guess.
Right, exactly. I guess that's where I'm going. So you can put some percentage odds on and things like that, and that's the educated guess. Well, what kind of odds would you give the Saints potentially of moving at all from 13, whether it be forward or backwards?
Depending on who would kind of tumble. I think that something will have to happen, Scott, out of alignment. And then they say, you know what, that pass rush guy is who we really like. Maybe let's make a maneuver up to get ahead of a team that will select him before we do. What I look at is the 7 spot, which is the Bears. Because when you look at it, that's where I think at least a couple pass rushers will still be there on the board. And it's right before the Bears pick, and they need defensive linemen. And Atlanta does. So if you're going to target a team to move up and you've got a good relationship with Ryan Pace and a little bit of ammunition to move up to get that particular pass rusher. If you did, then I look at the Saints making a double move. In essence, getting up into round 1 to get an earlier pick, and then with that 31st pick, moving back to try to recoup those picks. Because I think we're in agreement that this team is not one player, one position away. They've gotten old at a number of spots. And so when you look at this team was stripped 2 second-round picks in Bounty Gate, gave up an extra 3rd-round pick last year for Brandon Cooks, gave up a 1st and a 2nd for Mark Ingram. Last year's draft, other than Brandon Cooks, was a shoo-shoo across the board. Man, you don't need 1 or 2 players. You need 4 or 5 guys and duplicate what you did in 2006 all over again. So if you moved up, I think you can bet your last buck at 31 what they would try to do is to move back and try to recoup some of those selections. So I would think the team you target would be 7, and that would be the Bears.
Mike Detillier, our guest, ESPN 1420 and .com. And in one of your earlier mock drafts, you had the Saints selecting La'el Collins from LSU. If he falls to 13, how much do you think he's still in play compared to how you felt, say, 2 months ago?
Well, 2 months ago, I had all the pass rushers off the board. So this is my opinion that let's say Cleveland picks Gregory and all of them are off the board, look at the value you get with La'el at 13. I think he's the best pure tackle in this draft class. Because really, Brandon Sheriff, he may see a little bit of time at tackle, but he's really a better guard than he is a tackle. He's my higher-rated offensive lineman by just a tad. Collins is the best pure tackle. What I think you could do is say, you know what, we got to get a guy that can compete today with Tim Lolito. And eventually, he's the replacement for Zach Street at right tackle. Because I think that's where La'el's position is in the NFL, at the right side. And so I would have no objection at all to La'el Collins at 13. But when I did the early ones, Gregory was gone. So and every other pass rusher was gone too. So Collins seems to me to be maybe the fallback guy. And I know he's talked about defense and almost tipping his hand a little bit about that's where we're going to go. That's what we're going to look at. And, kind of privately, he's made those same comments that we need to get better on the defensive side of the football. He's got 2 defensive ends unsigned for next year. He's got a hole at middle linebacker that needs to be filled. I still think they pick a cornerback somewhere in this draft class, despite the fact that they've signed Brandon Bonner and they've got Delvin Breaux. Kyle Wilson's never shown me anything more than that he's the Jets' version of Patrick Robinson.
Right. Are those the biggest positions of need in your opinion? Middle linebacker, corner, and an edge rusher, and then an offensive lineman. I know I just named a bunch, but am I missing one here?
The defensive end too, because of the fact Hicks and Jordan in the final year of their contract, and I know they'd like to bring Jordan back and re-sign him, but Hicks has been a major disappointment, Scott. He's the potential guy. He looks like every year this is going to be the year he kind of blows up, and it doesn't happen. That's why at 31, I went with Eddie Goldman. My feeling was when I looked at the best players up on the board that were left for me at 31, Eddie was still there. I saw Eddie play a lot at Florida State. He played nose tackle, defensive end, defensive tackle, all 3 positions. Versatility. A lot of people have been critical of him that he's not an all-out player. You know what? I don't know where they saw it at because I never spotted that he wasn't a hustler out on the field. And he's a big man because he's 6'4", 330. And you can't ask him that he's going to crank that notch every down. That don't happen with a big man. But, boy, when he gets it cranked, he's a load, and his versatility is there. So that's why I went with Goldman at 31 and Gregory at 13. It solves your defensive end issue. You got some versatility in the 4-man alignment at tackle. One thing that Buckley gets hurt every year. And John Jenkins, who had really played well as a rookie, was a major disappointment.
Huge.
Here.
Absolutely.
And you could smack Eddie Goldman in the nose if you need to. You could put him at the nose tackle position. So I thought he was best value at that spot at 31. And you know what? I've had more people tell me that makes a lot more sense than Gregory at 13. So,
Interesting. What about 2 other players that potentially you think could be in play for the Saints at 31?
You know what? It's not a major need area, but Jalen Collins from LSU. I can tell you the Saints have spent a lot of time on Jalen. Brandon Brown is a 2-year guy here with the Saints. And you get the good and the bad with Brandon. He's big, he's physical, he brings a certain brand of football to the table. But he's grabby, pushy, shovey, penalties. I mean, it's going to happen. We saw it last year. So why wouldn't you bring in a guy like Jalen? Long arm, great speed, press cover corner. That's what you're looking for. I know Dennis Allen loves him. So does Rob Ryan. He may be there at that spot at 31. So I think he's certainly someone to play there. And so I would look at Jalen as a possibility. And if you go with Gregory, what would happen if one of the linemen tripped to you, so to speak, that you had a lineman fall, just take a little bit of a tumble? And the guy I'm looking at would be T.J. Clemens from Pittsburgh. It's a former defensive lineman, moved to the tackle position. He's really better off on the right side. He spent a little time at guard, but spent most of his career at tackle. And again, we're kind of looking at the same scenario as with La'el Collins.
ESPN 1420 and .com. Mike Detillier, our guest. A few more for you. Mike, 44 overall in the second round. So 3 picks in the first 44 that you got to hit on all of them, as you noted earlier, with an aging team needing to get impact guys. You mentioned middle linebacker earlier. I think inside linebacker is definitely a need. The McKinney kid out of Mississippi State could still be on the board there. Being that it's a position of need, is he a guy the Saints do you know if they have any interest in him? Where do you think they could go there at 44?
Okay, at 44, I have him picking Stephon Anthony, who's the middle linebacker at Clemson. A big, thickly built guy. Scouted him when he was coming out of high school. and he was a man shaving at 12 years old. I mean, he's cut, and he's a big, physical guy, and he takes care of business. He was overshadowed at Clemson because of Vic Beasley. But him and Grady Jarrett, I think, are two really good players who just didn't get the recognition at Clemson because of Beasley. When I see Stephon 6'2", almost 250 pounds, great athlete, but he's instinctive. He's smart, very physical. Look at his tackles. I mean, he is always around the football. The most impressive thing about the big guy is he's not great in coverage, but he's good. He can throw that big body in reverse pretty fast. Bernardrick McKinney is interesting because depending on who you talk to is how teams feel about him. Some teams are looking at him as an outside linebacker, as a rush guy. I do know this. If I pick him as an inside linebacker, on third down he's rushing the quarterback because of his size and speed. Some teams are even looking at him as a possible defensive end because of his size. So he's a little bit now of a hybrid player, former quarterback. He's not super quick to make that initial move to the ball carrier. And so at middle linebacker, you've got to have that instinct to do that. I think he's a good football player, but I'm not real sure he's not better off on the edge than he is inside.
With 9 picks in this year's draft, Mike, how many first-year impact players must New Orleans select to be a legitimate threat in 2015, in your opinion?
4. I think you've got to get 4.
I like it, right? Too. I mean, and this is what I've been stressing to folks a lot, Mike, about all the draft picks. When many years they've traded, they've given some up, so they only have 4 or 5. Well, you hit on 3 of them. Well, guess what? You only get 3 impact players. You hit on 1 of them, 2 of them. With 9 picks, you have more leeway to, if you strike out in 1 or 2, or a couple of them are project guys, you have a lot of others that you can fall back on, and you have a lot more of a luxury. Obviously, you can ill afford to go out there and strike out on a bunch, but if you whiff on a few, but you hit on half of those, guess what? People look back at the draft and say, you know what, 2015, that was a great draft for the Saints. So it's not so much of getting 9 players and every one of them is going to be on the team in the future. It's the fact that your margin for error is a little bit greater, and as a result, you know what? The results on the field usually end up being a lot better.
Yeah, look at 2006. You got Reggie Bush, Roman Harper, Jari Evans, Zach Strief, Marcus Colston, and you picked a guy who didn't play here much, but boy, he's a heck of a player, and that's Rob Ninkovich.
Yeah.
But on that draft day, you also traded for Jeff Fain, who's a starting center, and you got Hollis Thomas, who saw significant playing time as a defensive tackle the first couple of years on this team. Man, give me that one again. Let's have it a Groundhog's Day where, football-wise, and let's do that one all over again, where you could end up getting those type performers. And really, when you think back and you throw Drew Brees into the mix, those were the guys that really put this team into 2 NFC championship games. Jari Evans is the best guard the Saints has ever had, ever put on, a jockstrap and a helmet. The best offensive guard. And Marcus Colston will hold every receiving record when it's all over. You got that in one draft class.
And then in 2010, you don't have anybody still on the team. So the difference between hitting on a draft and not is instrumental in how far you're going to go. Last questions for you. By the way, you guys can follow Mike on Twitter at Mike Detillier. That's MikeDetillier. Several Raging Cajuns I got to ask you about. We're over here in Lafayette. Christian Ringo visited the Seahawks this week. What round do you see Ringo coming off the board?
I've got him sort of a 5th, 6th round pick. He's an intriguing player. I've had a lot of people who do draft books also, contact me because they didn't include him in theirs. But, he's a hot name right now. He's played inside at UL. I think he's really better off on the edge. But he's a guy you can maneuver around a little bit. And, we've all seen it. And he can get off the snap. He can rush the quarterback. Hand usage, quick, and he's a natural pass rusher. And it didn't surprise me Seattle's got him. I mean, in there for. I mean, he would almost fit exactly what they do, in that they collect pass rushers to come at you in waves. It's an old Ed Ogeron line, but Ed always is. I play 8-man rotation because in the fourth quarter, when it's 4 minutes left, how many times have we seen quarterbacks come in the games, they're down by 10 or 13, and they chew a defense apart because they can't get a pass rush. And so I think Ringo gives you that. He's going to be a situational player early on, but I think he's a guy, 5th, 6th round is where you see him peel off the board.
I'm going to ask you, throw a couple other names of Cajuns out there, just your thoughts on whether they're drafted, undrafted,
okay.
Good chance to make a team. Justin Hamilton.
I think he's undrafted. But he'll be a priority free agent. He'll sign with someone.
Daniel Quave.
I think Daniel will also be an undrafted free agent, and again, he'll have some interest, no question.
Alonzo Harris.
Alonzo doesn't get picked, and I think he's a guy that if I'm a cold weather team, I want him on my squad. Big physical back, so he's certainly going to be in a camp.
Terrance Broadway.
You know what? I think Terrance has got an outside shot to get selected. You know what? He's a winner. Now, he's been kind of nicked up a little bit at the college level, and he's going to have to be a better quarterback accuracy-wise in the pocket. But, man, how many times have we seen it, with him in the lineup? Man, the Cajuns are a much better team with him than when he's not.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Maker. And he can put the ball in tight spots. He's got a bit of an elongated delivery to throw the ball, but he's a good athlete, and I think he's a good developmental player. I think he's got an outside shot to get selected, but he'll have a host of teams looking to sign him as an undrafted free agent if he doesn't get picked.
Corey Trim and James Butler.
Butler, free agent. I think both those guys, they may have to go Canadian League, Arena League to get a look to if they want to extend their football career. But, we've seen that from a few guys already. And you know what? You are Lafayette. And this is the time of year scouts travel. And it's funny how the trip to Lafayette was short for most scouts. No longer that case today. Mark Hutchins put them back on the map.
Last one for you, Mike. He's not eligible to be drafted now. He will be next year if he wants to come out. He might not, but Eli's a special player, man. What a talent. Elijah McGuire, whenever he does end up, whether it's after his junior or senior year, what do you project him to be potentially at the next level?
Kind of a middle-range version of Reggie Bush. He's Louisiana's version of him. I saw him, as a 14-year-old playing quarterback, and he's one of the 3 best players on the Bayou I've seen in the last 25 years. Tilt the field. Terrific receiver coming out of the backfield, great speed. He's physically gotten bigger. All-purpose guy, who can return kicks now for you. So I don't know about being a first or second round pick, but I think in those middle rounds, 3rd and 4th round is where you would look at with Elijah. And you know what? I hope he gives the Cajuns 2 more years because body-wise, I think that he would be best suited for that, to kind of fill into that frame a little bit better, because he picked up a lot of weight last year because he went from like 170 pounds to like 195 pounds real quickly. And he's a special talent, and I knew that from day one. Listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but one thing, I can spot that he can play.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a difference maker out on that football field, and he can just do so many things for you. And I'm proud of him, of what he's been able to accomplish, and he's a good kid, good, hard-working young man.
Well, when it comes to evaluating talent and breaking it down, you're a special talent, have been doing it for a long time. Mike Detillier has been our guest. You can hear him all over the country on different radio stations every Saturday morning right here on ESPN 1420 on the Mr. Bitter Show. And, again, you can head to saintsreport.com or MikeDetillier.com and learn about how to acquire your copy of his 2015 draft report. I like to call it the Draft Guide Bible. Tons of in-depth information. Draft begins 2 weeks from tonight. Mike, my friend, you and I only chat about once a year or so, but it's always a pleasure. We love the work you put in, the time you put in, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Scott. Always my pleasure. Thank you.
You got it, man.